Namaskar and welcome to the session on food contamination and spoilage. The objective of this session is to reorient you with the basics of food contamination, food spoilage, and preservation methods. So, we will cover these aspects, and after the session, you will be able to define the terms food contamination and food spoilage. You will be able to identify various sources of food contamination, specify various types of spoilages, what is the role of microorganisms in spoilage, what are the factors affecting the rate of spoilage, and what are the principles and methods of food preservation. The first question comes, why food is vulnerable? Food is vulnerable because it has an excellent media for the growth of microorganisms. It has an abundant organic matter in food. Water is also there, and pH is either neutral or slightly acid. The food becomes unfit for consumption and can result in spoilage with unrestricted growth of microorganisms. So, food has many opportunities to get contaminated as it is produced, prepared, and transferred to the consumers. So, in short, food is an excellent media, has a good organic matter in food, water content is sufficient, the ecosystem is very positive for the growth of microorganisms, and also has the lot of opportunities in the supply chain to get contaminated. So, the food is vulnerable. Now, what is contamination? It is an introduction or occurrence of contaminant in food. Then next question comes, what is contaminant? A contaminant is any biological or chemical agent, foreign matter or other substances unintentionally added to food and that may compromise food safety or suitability or edibility. So, the important point is unintentionally added to food. They are not added intentionally. When we add intentionally, it becomes adulteration or food fraud. So, contamination is a process where contaminant may occur, may enter into this, but it is unintentionally. And we say biological, chemical, or physical agents in our conditions of food which have the potential to cause an adverse health effect. Now we include along with the chemicals allergens also. So these are the contaminants. Now how does the food contaminants is defined by the codex? So first thing is same, these are substances which are not been added intentionally to the food. The food production can lead to substances into the food that these contaminants during manufacture, handling, storage, processing or distribution. The contaminants can also enter from the environment also. So, the presence of these must be monitored carefully to avoid contamination because they affect the quality of food or make the food unsafe. What is the effect? Contaminated food can cause long-term health problems. They also cause the foodborne illnesses or disease, and these particular diseases are hit harder onto the vulnerable group. Vulnerable group means children and the elder people. This also have economic impact. Food security is there. So these are the effect of contaminated. The people can get sick, various type of diseases, foodborne diseases could also take place, economic impact because of the wastage, also on the food security aspect also. So the codex has defined minimum level for a contaminant in a food or feed commodity, that is the maximum concentration of that substance recommended by the Codex Alimentary Commission to be legal permitted in that commodity. Our country has also regulation on this aspect. Now, what are the sources of food contaminants or contamination can take place? First is the food production itself. In the production itself, when we use excess of chemical fertilizers, veterinary drugs, growth hormones, so their residues can remain in the food and they have a potential for contamination. Certain contaminants are natural in origin, like we have in the plants we have a tannins and oxalates, toxic alkaloids are there, and shellfish toxins are also there. The third source is environmental factors like polluted soil, air, and water. And there are carriers of microorganisms and chemicals. They can come from the industrial waste or untreated sewage. Heavy metals can also come into the product. They are like lead, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, and they can also have an ill effect onto the human beings. The other sources like toxins, which is a type of environmental pollutant, microplastic, polycarbonate biphenyls, these all can be present into the food, like PCBs. Now, what PCB does, it suppresses our immune system, so we can easily get sick. So, these are toxins, PCBs, they are very harmful pollutants which can spoil our food and it will have a long ill effect will be there. Then the processing itself is a major source. Like there can be the ingredients, quality of raw material, including the water, what type of processing method we are using. If we are using very high heat treatment, that can also lead to the different type of contaminants. Equipment, like if you take stainless steel, aluminum, are different type of, so they can contribute. Cleaning and sanitization process, handlers, hand conditions, hygiene practices, pest, waste, all these can be the source of the contaminants could be there. Similarly, the food storage and transportation, the humidity, temperature, packaging condition. There is an important word, cross contamination. So, what is cross contamination? It is the contamination of a food product from another contaminated source. There are three types: food to food, people to food, and equipment to food. Like take your example, if you are in a fridge, you keep two substances. One is properly cooked and one is raw product. Now, if you have kept the raw product onto the top of the fridge and the cooked product on the bottom shelf, sometimes from the raw product, the raw material can contaminate the cooked product. So, this type of contamination is food to food. People to food, that your food is cooked properly, food is ready, and some handler, when it touches the ready food, that can cause the cross contamination. At the equipment to food, you have prepared a good quality food, but the equipment where you have kept the food, that is not clean. So these are the examples of cross contamination. That is a contamination of a food from another contaminated source. That is from the food itself, from the people, or from the equipment could be there. So you see the example, in the center, raw material with natural microflora is there. Now, spoiled food, if it comes to touch, it can spoil. Processing equipment can come. Diseased plant and animals as a raw material can convert. Packaging material can convert. Same way, the pests can give the problem to the packaging material. The spoiled food can spoil the air can also impact it. So, same way. The other is dust, soil, sewage, human. So you can see what are the various sources of contaminants which can enter and spoil our food. See this example. On the left side is the raw material and then the final product is being prepared. So in the processing area where the process is taking place, so there the like a waste can, cleaning and sanitization, what is the building design, how the handlers have been trained, storage. So these are the pest So these are the things which can contaminate our food. So this is brief about the food contamination. Now we come to the food spoilage. What is food spoilage? It is the process of change in the physical and chemical properties of food so that it becomes unfit for consumers. That is, it can be physical, chemical, and there could be change, sensory, nutritional changes can be take place. Now, what are the causes? They are chemical and biological. Biological mean because of the inherent enzymes which are present in the system, or because of growth of the microorganisms, or there could be invasion by insects and the worms could be there. Microorganisms spoil the food and they produce the substances that can change the color, texture and odor of the food is there. And the chemicals are like over-ripening can take place, stealing can take place, off flavor, odors like rancidity, common example. Sometimes when you take the samosa or the uh, namkeen, you will find the very different taste. It is because the oil is rancid is there. Now, what are the desirable characteristics? How do you identify? First thing is right stage of maturity of food should be there. Freedom from pollution. There should not be minimum pollution. It should be free from objectionable chemical and physical changes, maybe because of the enzymes, microorganisms, rodents, parasites, and like freezing, heating. So these should be not any objectionable thing should not be there. Freedom from microorganisms and parasites causing the foodborne illness. So these are the desirable. So any physical, chemical or biological change will lead into the food spoilage is there. So what are the factors for spoilage? First is the growth and activity of microorganisms, activities of food enzymes, infestation by insects, parasites and rodents, chemical changes in food like we gave the example of browning and acidity, physical changes primarily in the freezing or baking and presence of foreign bodies. The reasons is primarily improper handling, processing, water and raw material quality, humidity, temperature, non-grade equipment, non-grade packaging. These are some of the reasons for the spoilage of the fabrics there. There is one other way also of classifying the food on the basis of stability. We call the food, as you know also, non-perishable, which is long life and can be stored at a room temperature, like sugar, dried grains, and salt. Semi-perishable, they have a moderate shelf life, a couple of weeks or even a month or two, and can be spoiled if not properly stored, like potatoes, onions, eggs, bread, cheese. Perishable mean high risk. They have a high moisture content and have a shorter shelf life for 1 or 2 days. And they require proper storage and handling, just like fish, milk, meat. So these are the three examples of classification of food on the stability. Now let us take the first review. So presence of pin in a tea bag is an example of which type of contamination. So you write your answer. Sorting of milk is an example of which type of spoilage. Rancid flavor is an example of which type of spoilage. Then you also define the word contaminants, food spoilage. So this is our first review is there. Now we come the what is the role of microorganisms. As we know, there are three types of microorganisms: mold, yeast, and bacteria. The mold presence can be seen on any product, like a furry hypha or thread-like structure could be there, and they could be colored also. And they normally give the musty odor and flavor. You must have seen also sometimes in the bread, the mold growth is there. Yeast spoilage is mainly because of the you can recognize by the bubbles and alcoholic smell, in particular like sherbet or squash. If it is a very long time, yeast growth is there, so you will find the carbon dioxide bubbles and the alcoholic flavor will be there. The third group bacteria, it is very difficult to recognize this spoilage by sight, smell or this, because In this particularly, spore forming bacteria are very important, like particularly Bacillus and Clostridium, because they can cause the disease also. Now, what are the growth of microorganisms? There are four phases of growth. First is the lag phase. That is, the microorganisms, when they enter into any place, they need 4 hours to adopt the new environment. Now, this becomes important when you prepare any food. You decide in 4 hours first, either cool the food, heat it, or eat it. So, these first 4 hours are very important. Then the log or growth phase, second phase, where the microorganisms will grow and tend to form colonies in a very rapid way. The stationary phase is the third phase. Now, the food is limited, so the microorganisms, they excrete tox and they become toxic, so the growth will not take place. And in the death phase, cell begin to die also. So the type, it depends upon the growth of microorganisms, will depend upon the type of organism involved, its ability to gain nourishment from the food, competition from other microorganisms, initial load, and environmental conditions. Now, this is the cycle to show. You can see a typical growth curve. On horizontal axis, we have time and log of number of bacteria. So, first is the lag phase, like I mentioned, 4 hours. Then growth phase is very fast. Then they come to the stationary or resting phase, and last is they die also is there. So, what are the factors which affect the spoilage? There are extrinsic factor, that is external factors, environment, and external to food, and they are temperature, humidity, and oxygen. Then there are internal factors, that is the part of the food system. So, they are pH, water activity, nutrient content, and structure of food. So, what factors we say which affect the spoilage? The nutrition, that is the food, what is the water activity, what is pH, temperature, humidity, and oxygen. These are the. So, you can see the examples of internal factors of the food, like water activity, oxygen availability, pH, acidity, acidulant identity, buffering capacity, then natural antimicrobial substances, and the external factors are like temperature, relative humidity, atmospheric conditions, and packaging. These are the factors. Now, we will discuss a few of them. Temperature, every microorganisms have a optimum, minimum, and maximum temperature. Normal optimum growth for multiplication is 15 to 40 degrees centigrade. And some microorganisms can grow at sub-zero also, can grow up above 100 degrees also. We classify into three groups. Thermophiles. Thermophiles are those bacteria which love high temperature. When we say high temperature, their optimum temperature is above 45 degrees centigrade, like Bacillus stereothermophilus, Lactobacillus thermophilus. Mesophilus, they are in the medium temperature, that is between 20 and 45 degrees centigrade, Lactobacillia and Staphylococci. And saccharotrophes mean the cold temperature which they thrive at temperature below 20 degrees centigrade, the Pseudomonas is there. Now, oxygen and relative humidity, we also define the microorganisms based on the oxygen, that if they need more free oxygen, they are called as aerobic microorganisms, like Pseudomonas is there. Certain organisms, they don't need oxygen. Absence of oxygen, we call them anaerobic microorganisms, like Clostridium. There are certain which can be accommodated in both ways, that is with or without oxygen. We call them as a facultative, like Lactobacillus is there. Similarly, relative humidity. Bacteria need 90% or more of relative humidity. Yeast need 90% or higher. Mold can grow at 85 to 90% also. There is another term which we all know also, we have covered, water activities. That is very important. It is not the moisture percentage. It is the water available for the microbial reactions. And how do we define it? As a vapor pressure of solution over vapor pressure of water. Now, the optimal for the microorganisms to grow is 0.99, but most microorganisms require 0.91. You can see the requirement for, like, most spoilage bacteria can take place at 0.9 water activity for their growth. For spoilage yeast, it is 0.88, and most spoiled mold is 0.80. Similarly, the pH, the most organisms, the optimal growth for the bacteria is around 7. Now, yeast, they need the acid environment, and best is in between the 4 and 4.5. Now, the mold, they can tolerate 2 to 8, but they also grow at acid pH. So, you can see the neutral pH where the growth, that is around 7, growth range of most microorganisms will take place. And there are certain alkaline prefer, acidic prefer, but too acidic and too alkaline microbes will be destroyed, except for the yeast and mold. Yeast can grow at high acid also, around 4 to 4.5. Mold can also grow from 2 to 8 is there. Now, what are the nature of spoilage? Simple example is, if you take there are changes in color, smell, consistency, texture. Color, banana, you take the example. If you leave it as such, banana will turn black and you will not accept it. Smell, like rancid smell of oil, fatty foods, or bitter smell of curd or starchy food. So there are examples of like rancid samosa, potato vada, chakli. These are the consistency also change, like curdling of milk, stickiness and undesirable viscosity in the spoiled cooked legumes could be there. Texture can also change, softening and lump formation could be there. Slimy formation could be there, particularly because of the aerobic bacteria and yeast. So these are the some of the physical changes like color, body, thickening, odor and flavor, putrefaction of bacteria is there. Sorting is basically because production of acid by microorganisms. Chemical also there could be changes, like protein can release the sulfur compounds, lipid oxidation as I mentioned, sugar can release lactic acid. So these are the some examples with the food. Like in bread, there could be mold or ropey. Now mold is because of the mold rhizopus. Ropey is because of the bacteria bacillus is there. Similarly, sugar syrups can lead to ropiness, yeasty or moldy. So like depending upon the what is growing. If yeast like Saccharomyces or the mold growth is there. In the fresh fruits, because of the mold, we can see the rots can take place, and in the pickles, yeast can be there, and in fresh meat, putrefaction can take place. Similarly, in the fish, there could be discoloration or colorless rot could be there because of the pseudomonas could be there. Eggs can be also spoiled, green rot, colorless because of the pseudomonas could be there. Orange juice can give the off flavor because of the lactobacillus is there. Poultry can give you slime or odor because of pseudomonas is there. So now we take the second review. So you answer these questions, state different phases of growth of microorganisms. What are the factors which affect the food spoilage? Name type of spoilages in bread. Then what is soft raw? So you take a review, write your answers and then compare it. Now we come to the last component of the food preservation. Now when we want to preserve the food, there are two methods there. First is the prevent or delay of microbial decomposition, and second is delay of self decomposition. Now how we can prevent or delay of the microbial decomposition? First is like by keeping microbes out, we call it as asepsis. Second, we remove the microbes by filtration. Third, by reducing the rate of microbial growth by low temperature, drying. Then fourth method is by killing the microbes by heat or by radiation. So these are the methods. First group is either we prevent or delay the microbial decomposition, either by filtration or by reducing the rate of growth or by killing the bacteria. But we want to also control the delay of self decomposition, though there we have to handle in two ways. Food enzymes which are present, these are to be inactivated, and we have to see that there should not be any chemical reaction to the food. So these are the preventive methods. Like first we will take the important preservation method, heat. When you heat any food, it will kill the microbes by inactivating their proteins and changing the physical and chemical properties of their protein. The most common use of the heat is normally pasteurizations, sterilization, and canning is example where we take the wash, grade the food product, the blanching is done, then the containers are canned under pressurized steam pressure is there. So heat is the best method to kill the microorganisms, but there could be some inactivation of vitamins also. Low temperature, it will reduce the growth and reproduction, and that's why we can see at low temperature the shelf life of the product increases. Drying is where the water is removed, like spray dried, drum dried, freeze product is there. Osmotic pressure is principle of osmosis is used, and we know also in it is a part of our traditional method by adding salt into the pickles or sugar. So they remove the water and they stop metabolism of cell due to the shrinkage is there. Similarly, chemical preservatives could be added such as sorbic, benzoic, and propionic acid. They check the growth of yeast and mold. Sorbic acid is for syrups, propionic acid is for the bacteria, and benzoic acid is for the beverages and margarine. Ethylene oxide for the spices, nuts, and dried foods are there. Like cleaning and washing, they reduce the microbial load. The second operation is cold storage. They prevent the growth of most pathogenic bacteria, slow the growth of spoilage microorganisms. Freezing below -80 degrees centigrade prevents the growth of all microorganisms. Pasteurization, it will kill all the pathogens. Blanching, it will kill the enzymes and the surface bacteria. Canning will sterilize the food. Drying will stop the growth of microorganisms because water activity is less than 0.6. Similarly, salting, it stops the growth of microorganisms. Sugar also growth when water activity is less. Acidifying also. So these are the effects. After seeing the different methods, let us see how these preservation methods affect the microorganisms. Now, first is reduction or inhibition of microorganisms. So, what is the preservation factors? There are like low temperature, low water activity, restriction of nutrient available, lowered oxygen, raised carbon dioxide, acidification, alcoholic fermentation, and use of preservatives. So, these preservation methods reduce the growth of the microorganisms. So, like low temperature, how this method is achieved by chilling and the frozen storage. Low water activity can be achieved by drying, curing, and conserving. Restriction of nutrient availability could be compartmentalization in water in oil immersion. Lowered oxygen can be through vacuum packing and nitrogen packing. Raised carbon dioxide by MAP, modified atmosphere packaging. Acidification could be addition of salt and fermentation. Like we know also in preparation of dahi, how it preserves because of the acid formation. Alcoholic fermentation, brewing is there. Use of preservatives like inorganic one, sulfide, nitrite are there. Organic like sorbate, benzoate are used, and natural bactericins can be also used. So this is the reduction or inhibition of growth. Now we want to inactivate the microorganisms. So there are three methods: heating, like pasteurization and sterilization; irradiation by using the ionizing radiations; pressurizing, application of high hydrostatic pressure. So to summarize, a contaminant is any biological or chemical agent, foreign matter or other substance unintentionally added to food, but they may compromise food safety or suitability. The impact could be on the health risks, economic cost, and food security. We have a standard food safety and standard contaminants, toxins, and residues. So you can see the regulations where the levels have been defined. Food spoilage is the process of change in the physical and chemical properties of the food. Spoilage factors include internal and external, that is nutrition, water activity, pH, temperature, humidity, and oxygen. Preservation methods include by two ways. Either we control the microbial decomposition or self-decomposition. So we covered this in this session. Now what is takeaway? The takeaway is good food ensures good life. So make food safe by keeping away contamination and spoilage. Thank you. Thank you very much.